Welcome to the Board of Education's April 25th, 2024 called meeting for consideration of our fiscal year 2025 budget. Please stand as we observe a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Ms. Bike. Good evening. We just have a few announcements before we begin our special called meeting. I just wanted to let you know that Dr. Reiswick and I have made the decision to cancel the May 17th policy review meeting. There are several reasons, including schedule conflicts for multiple board members that I've been made aware of, but also it's an extremely busy time for staff, and we have graduation that night and 3 others starting at 1 p.m. that day. So we will plan to cover the full G section at the June 28th policy review meeting. And I know Ms. Himmelgarn feels good about that time frame as well, since we did a lot of work to that section just a few months ago. So I hope that time change works for everybody's schedule. I also wanted to let you know that Mr. Wright has agreed to step into Mr. McMillan's previously appointed committees. And I have appointed him to serve on the Knox County Investment Committee and our own Ethics Committee. So thank you, Mr. Wright, for stepping into those roles. Additionally, I wanted to share my appointments to this year's Board Student Representative Selection Committee. That's a mouthful. That's a big one. Ms. Christie is our board representative on the committee alongside Celeste as our current student representative. And in accordance with Board Policy J450, Ms. Lautner serves as the Assistant Superintendent of Strategy. In addition, Halls High School Principal Spencer Long, community member and parent Ashley Smethers, and community leader and partner Dr. Susan Dalton complete that committee, and it includes representation from each of our 5 regions. Ms. Christie will be sharing information about their work at the May board meeting. And I know we're all looking forward to the announcement on who will be our next student representative. And I just want to say, Celeste, you've been an amazing student representative, so thank you for your service to our board. Also, United Way of Greater Knoxville is transitioning their working group into a Knox County Community School Steering Committee and made a request for a school board representative. So I'm going to serve on that committee until next year's appointments are made this fall. And I look forward to providing you with information on that work going forward. And I just want to say that I know a lot of us have heard from multiple people in the community about the current legislation. And I know John and I had our agenda set meeting earlier today, and Ms. Christie is going to be bringing a resolution to our May meeting. So I look forward to that thoughtful discussion in May. And just remember that today's special called meeting is for the budget. But I do look forward to having that discussion going forward. Are there any requested changes to the agenda? All right. We have a motion to approve by Mr. Triplett, a second by Ms. Horn. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. We will go on with the agenda. I know we're going to start with public forum. I believe we have a public forum speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paula, appreciate you being here. You will state your name, county residence, and then you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Paula Hancock, county of residence is Knox County. Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent John Reiswick, I just wanted to take this opportunity this evening to share that as your collaborative conferencing partner, the KCA PECA team is committed to advocating for an improved salary structure and salary increases for our Knox County schools K through 12 educators. In the words of our KCA PECA chair, Chuck O'Donnell, we feel like the proposed salary schedule is a major breakthrough and representative of the superintendent's intent to invest in the one resource that's imperative to its success, the employees of Knox County schools. As with any significant change, we cannot predict every potential problem or concern that may arise. That's where your PECA team stands ready to collaborate with our administrative counterparts to secure the best possible outcome for the teachers of Knox County schools. And we ask that we let us rise up together and build a salary structure and schedule that will provide market value salaries for every teacher, every custodian, every principal, every secretary, every employee of Knox County schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Madam Chair, that concludes the public forum.
All right, thank you, Mr. Triplett. Ms. Coatney, would you like to start our items?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Item 6, approve the fiscal year 2025 general purpose budget at the major category level for $683,700,000.
Motion by Mr. Watson, a second by Reverend Butler. Do we have any discussion? Ms. Owen?
I don't really want to go first. I have a couple of questions that I haven't had a chance to ask. Looking at page A1 under certified subs, could someone give us a little clarity on what that decrease entails? There are several places, several pages where we have decreases in certified subs. Actually, A1 is an increase, and then I think the decrease is further along. So if somebody could just tell us what those differences are, there's not an explanation there. What? Oh, the tab I'm in is the general purpose budget, the actual budget, which is another issue. Having that as an appendix is really confusing, I think. So I am in the general purpose budget, which may be your appendix. And on page A1, we have an increase in certified subs. It's listed as a budgetary true-up, but then there's some other places where I see certified subs throughout where there are decreases. So I'm trying to figure out what that budgetary true-up is. Is that something that we budgeted for and we didn't have those subs? And the reason I ask that is because I don't see anything for non-certified subs. So I'm trying to understand that.
Ms. Mulgarn?
Madam Chair, Ms. Owen, I'll take the true up first. So the true up would be an alignment to what we're actually spending on substitutes, a closer alignment to what we are spending on substitutes. There are I can think of one specific area where there is a decreased budget for substitutes, and if there are others, we can go through those too. There's one specifically for our lead teachers, for example. There was a change in the allocation of lead teachers, and then we also adjusted the substitutes that are provided for those lead teachers. So that change was a decrease. So the substitutes were also decreased. But if there's other specifics, we can go through.
So if we're truing up, looking at what we're actually spending, and we are putting in a budget a number that's less because we don't have subs, is that going to create a problem if we suddenly do have subs to cover positions?
So I believe if I'm understanding your question correctly, I believe the true up on A1 was an increase.
Yes, there is an increase on A1. And then when we look at A3, there's a decrease. And then I believe there were some other decreases throughout. So I'm wondering why I don't see it for non-certified subs.
I may need Dr. Wilson to help me on the A3. I believe that the decrease in A3 is because that was out of the Learning and Literacy Department specifically. I believe it's that they were no longer using those.
So are these specific to planned absences? Are these not for teachers who are out sick? Are these for in-service items and things like that only?
Yeah, it would be a different answer for a different line item. So for the lead teachers that we talked about, those would be for planned absences. For the lead teachers, relief from the classroom to perform their lead teaching duties. For the A1, I may call on Mr. McPherson to verify for me, but I believe that is for our substitutes for absences. Okay. I got a thumbs up.
Okay, so the expectation, so I can ask a real question now. So the expectation is that we will spend more on absences next year and less on some of the line items where we have had a planned in-service or absence for some reason.
Under lead teacher specifically, yes, less.
Okay.
Under the budgetary true-up, I would need to verify whether we are budgeting more because we're spending more. So I don't know that we are. I don't know that we will be actually spending more next year. We're budgeting more because we are spending more than we have allotted.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I get that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Dr. Wilson, did you want to?
Yes, Madam Chair,
Okay.
Ms. Owen, I would clarify too what she's saying, especially in several of the areas that would fall under academics. As you all know, we sort of pushed our folks to go back and look at things that were sort of held items, over time in their budgets and decide if that was something that was going to be used on an annual basis. And subs and PD was one of those pieces that they often leaned back into to go, I might need this every 5 years, but I don't need it every year. And so when you see that reduction in subs, like a $10,000 line item or something that's kind of in their control, not like a teacher was sick, right? But just within their control, that was a common item that many of them said was something they didn't need to keep in an annual budget.
Okay, thank you. And my next question may be for you also, Dr. Wilson. So I'm looking through here at all kinds of places where we are having decreases in instructional supplies and office and minor equipment. Mm-hmm. And some of these are listed as true ups, some of them are not. But the thing that concerns me is that if I'm looking at decreases in instructional supplies, mm-hmm. that seems to run counter to our goals. And so if these decreases, if the decreases are because teachers didn't spend it all in a year, is it because they had things from ESSER to fill in, and are they going to be short in the future? Or is it because, let me give you an example. When I had an allocation in a music classroom, mm-hmm. I often didn't spend my whole allocation because my allocation was too small to purchase an instrument, and I couldn't hold it over for the next year. Right. So I either had to find tiny things I could buy, or I had to find someone else to supplement that money. So I'm trying to figure out what is happening with this money, because overall, it's a large amount. Looking at it line by line, it's lots of small amounts. Mm-hmm. But when we look at the amount of instructional supplies that we are decreasing, I'm concerned about how those would be covered.
So I would start by saying I think your question about things that have been purchased out of ESSER and then looking across a number of different budgets, that answer is probably different for each of those different reductions. Once again, our task with our academic supervisors as they looked at their budgets was to look into places where they had not fully utilized those resources, look into places where they had potentially had the same budget for years and years, and ask that question of what is really critical to us implementing our program. And so in terms of those instructional supplies, again, content area by content area, that would be different, but the task they were given was to say what is really needed and what do we need to make sure that we're hanging on to support the programs. I would say to that point, when you think about instructional materials and supplies, you think about changes in curriculum, you think about changes in what we're asking teachers to be prepared to do that maybe has changed over time. Part of this is we're looking at budgets that were built a very long time ago and that even new supervisors have inherited and things like that. So there were some corrections in some places that they were able to look at and say that this has not been the best service of those dollars over time.
Okay. And it's been a long time since I've asked this, but I would just like to throw it out there. I think it would be very beneficial if the board could have a listing of those allocations for each content area. Sure. So that we could take a look at what those actually are. Mm-hmm. And as an example, I would tell the board that when I was teaching 700 music students, my allocation was $150. So I had $150 for whatever I needed for 700 students. And that allocation has not changed significantly since that time. So I think if we could see some of those allocations, especially when we're looking at a $15,000 cut in educational supplies and science, I think we need to see exactly what that's impacting. I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you. And I think, I don't think I need that question answered. There's just one more thing I'd like to make sure the board thinks about as we look at things in the future. When we are looking at our custodial budget, and when we're talking about those positions that are being filled, every time we are given a number of how many openings we have, I want to be sure that in our minds we add 20 to it, because this budget is taking that 20 out. And even though we've talked about making sure we add those back in as we're able, our custodians are understaffed as it is. So removing those positions is not necessarily helping to retain custodians. They need more help, not less help. So every time we hear a number of vacancies, I want to be sure that we remember to add 20 in our mind. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Horn, I know your light was on before.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's a good point, Ms. Owen, that we do need to, I'm assuming, Ms. Himmelgarn, that if we're able to hire custodial staff in addition to what is budgeted, I'm assuming that we would still be able to do that. There would likely be funds from some other place as we get into this budget. Would that be accurate to Ms. Owen's point?
Madam Chair, Ms. Horn, I think that if we would be very pleased to announce that that we were fully staffed, even with the 20 FTE reduction. And if that happens, then there could be a point in the future where we come before the board and ask for some of those positions back in a future budget.
Okay, good, thank you. That's what I assumed, but I think that's important just to make sure that everybody understands that just because we're taking them out of the budget doesn't mean that we couldn't find funds to add those back if we have the opportunity. So I think it's a wise decision to look at reality, and so I'm glad that it is like this. And hopefully you will have to come back to us and tell us that. That would be great. And I also think that Ms. Owen makes a good point about supplies and materials, because we always hear those kinds of things in the schools. So we haven't talked a lot about that because we have had so many other issues with the budget, but that's a concern. I know that's a concern for most teachers throughout our system. So that is absolutely a concern. But I also do want to say I'm thankful, most importantly out of this whole budget, I think we just have to say to commend the staff for coming to us with a budget that allows for us to address many of those issues that we've spent hours discussing over the past multiple years. So we've talked about our secretarial staff, the salaries. We've talked about the custodial staff. We've talked about nutrition. We've talked about teacher salaries. So I'm very, very thankful that we have a budget that we can be proud of, that we can say we're getting everybody up to market value. I mean, to be able to, that's a really high note for me to be leaving the board on when it comes to that time, because we've struggled with this for so long. So I'm really thankful that the budget that you brought us last year helped put us in position to make this investment in our staff and an investment at every level. So I hope that that every employee will understand that they are so very valued, and that we do that this board and the superintendent and the assistant superintendents and department chairs really value every single staff member, and every single person that works for Knox County Schools is vital to the mission of the organization. So I just want to say thank you to the superintendent and the staff, and just, you know, and just how excited I am for many of our employees that will hopefully feel like they are valued.
I agree, Ms. Horn. Thank you for that. Ms. Spike?
Thank you. I also agree with Ms. Horn and Ms. Owens, and I'm so glad that we get to do this for our teachers and staff. And I'm especially in agreement with the custodians and all of the other staff, including teachers, but also the ones that are kind of thought of a little bit less. As I understand, and I haven't been on the board that long, but with custodians especially, what has been in the budget over time and over the decade or so, kind of the amount of positions continue to be cut, and I worry about that a little bit with, you know, I know that they're not filled now, and I'm glad to hear that if we do fill them, that we could revisit and then continue to fill past that. And going with that, I'm also glad that we get to pay them more, but has it been decided what market range that they will start at? Do we know that?
Madam Chair, Ms. Spike, yes, it has. I think that that they will be one of the first groups notified once that's all finalized, because they are on the 260-day employment link. So their new pay would start sooner than others.
But so it's been decided, but they haven't been notified yet.
Correct.
I would just like to really, really request that they not start out on the very beginning market range, the very lowest one that is starts at $14. I would really love to see them start higher than that. As I understand, that's the lowest pay. Is that correct?
The grade band 101 step 0 is $14.
Okay. I would love to see them start a step higher than that. And I'm curious about, so when they are notified, is that all staff that's notified at the same time? So like school secretaries, bookkeepers, things like that, everyone gets notified?
That's a good question, and that would be ideal if all were notified at the same time. I think that likely will not happen because of the time crunch. The priority will be to notify the 255 and 260 employees first, because their pay is affected first. So they work on July 1, for example, and then the 221s and 200s. So close in time, but unfortunately, I don't think it will all be on the same day.
Do you think that the spread is over a week, 2 weeks of like how they will get notified, or a month? Kind of what are we looking at?
Hard to say exactly. Yes, a month or less. I'll look at Mr. Bolton. He can tell me if I am incorrect. Hopefully shorter than that, though.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Watson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one of the comments I want to make is I think one of the strengths in this budget is my perception of it is it was developed much more bottom up than top down. And I think whenever you have a budget like that, you're going to see some cuts and some additions in places that maybe you weren't used to seeing it, because you're getting people influencing that from different seats and different positions. And just to use Ms. Owens' example that she brought up earlier as an indication of that, I mean, I didn't look at it through this lens, but just doing a rough look, it looks like there's also areas where instructional supplies increase, right? As well as the other area that we had mentioned. And so to me, I think I'm not surprised by that, and not just in that one category. There's other categories as well. And so to me, regardless of how those numbers shook out, I have more confidence in the budget because I feel like we brought in more of the right audience, which are the people who are closest to the work, to help inform that budget. Because I'm sure if people at that level were saying, we don't need as many supplies, it's probably because they really don't in a certain area versus another area who says, hey, I really do need it. And again, I'm just using the supplies example because we already brought it up, but I'm sure there's lots of line items that are impacted that way. So I hope that's a practice, and I would assume, at least under Dr. Riswood's leadership, that it will be, but I hope that's a practice that we continue to maintain because I think we'll be healthier for it. And I think it'll allow us to better align our resources on some of those other initiatives that take more dollars because we're not retaining dollars in areas that aren't really needed, like what we're doing this year with what we've already mentioned in terms of our new staffing, our new pay schedule, salary schedule, which obviously is going to be a critical thing for the school system to move forward, and not just to maintain, but hopefully we'll also initiate the practice that's been recommended of doing something like that every 5 years, where we have a new study and kind of look, are we at market and are we making the shifts? Because what we don't want to do, no matter how excited I am, and I think most of us are about this particular budget, is we don't want to wake up 15, 20 years from now and be like, oh my gosh, we're like back in the same boat again. So I'm just putting a little, just pushing that out there one more time. So.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. I do want to say, Dr. Riswick and, to all the staff, I'm excited about this budget. I think it's a very thoughtful budget. You guys really did the heavy lifting. I was in some schools today, and they're very excited about the pay schedule and the salary study. So all good things. So thank you for all your hard work on that. And if there's no other discussion, Ms. Coatney, can we please do a roll call vote?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Dr. Butler? Yes. Ms. Owen? Yes. Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Bike? Yes. Ms. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Triplett?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Christie? Yes. Ms. Henderson?
Yes.
That's 9 yes votes.
Awesome. Motion carries. Next item.
Item 7, approve the fiscal year 2025 capital budget for $99,700,000 with new appropriations of $79,300,000.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Triplett, a second by Ms. Christie. Do we have any discussion on this item? Okay. Seeing there's no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8, approve the fiscal year 2025 school nutrition fund budget at the major category level for $32,865,000.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Triplett, second by Ms. Christie. Any discussion? Seeing there's no discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. On to board forum. This is an easy. Celeste. Reverend Butler. Ms. Owen. Mr. Watson. Ms. Pike.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that on Tuesday, I had also, not knowing that Christy would be potentially bringing something, sent something to Mr. Dupler about this whole arming teacher situation. But I look forward to being collaborative in our future meetings and all of those things. Thank you.
Mr. Wright. Ms. Christie. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Riswick, again, for all your hard work. I'm excited for this year's budget and looking forward to going into May and graduation season and all good things. So with that, we are adjourned.